Hello. Today I wanted to talk about how to basically integrate the Cycle CLI into various CI/CD tools. Examples that I'll sort of go through today are going to be Jenkins with a Jenkins file, and then Azure DevOps with a Azure Pipelines.yaml file. So basically, we have a lot of customers and partners who ask us, how can we run cycle tests autonomously, using a CI/CD tool, and I wanted to cover in this video how to make that a reality. So the first thing we're going to start with is the actual image itself. So to cover that, I'm actually going to use a virtual machine that my Jenkins environment has kicked off to run a test for me. And here we can see I'm currently running cycle tests. You can see some Cycle CLI output right here. Let's see. This is just like a web browser test. We can see the CLI from the Cycle CLI output is being sent over to Jenkins, and I'm able to look at what's happening in that test. Here's a WinApp driver test. So this virtual machine that is connected to this Jenkins environment as an agent, I'm going to remote desktop into there. So this is that virtual machine right now. It's connected. Let me zoom in a little bit. So the main thing with these VMs that is required to get Cycle to work on them is basically we need to have the tooling installed on the actual virtual machine itself. We typically recommend building your virtual machines from an image, and that image should have all of the tools required for Cycle to properly work. We have some example code and a Packer build file to help customers and partners sort of get started with a what we call a Cycle ready image. But basically on this image, I have got Cycle installed and set up in the environment path. So if I look at environment variables, I'll see Cycle included in my path. So under my system variables, if I go out to path, we could see I have got Cycle in there. Actually, I have two of them, but that double slash does not matter. But I'll delete that one. So I've got the Cycle directory in the path already, and what that means is that I can call the Cycle CLI by just typing Cycle CLI without being in a directory or things like that. So that really is the main thing, is having Cycle installed and then having the Cycle directory in your system path so that the Cycle CLI is referenceable. That way within Jenkins I can simply call Cycle CLI and run my command, in this case a WinApp driver test, to test if Notepad is functioning properly. So let's see here. I'm going to take a look at the actual Jenkins file for how this test is powered. So this Jenkins file, this is the one that we're using for our the environment I'm just showing you right now. This Jenkins environment that's running in Azure, it is spinning up agents based off of our image that's got Cycle preloaded and all of that stuff, and then calling the CLI, the Cycle CLI, in a Jenkins file is rather simple. So we've got this stage to run our Cycle tests, and all I'm referencing is I'm adding in a step that's a PowerShell step, and we're using these triple double quotes to run it inline. That's what those are for. But literally all I'm doing is dropping in Cycle CLI and then my arguments for my Cycle CLI command. So in this case, I'm authenticating using our newer app ID and app ID credential set of authenticating to the CLI. I'm passing in my project using some variables. And then I pass in my Cycle user file, and then I pass in at the end my feature file. So command is rather simple, And then you can see for the different features, I use pretty much everything else the same. The only thing that changes is the name of the feature file. So that's sort of what Jenkins looks like in a Jenkins file, of how to reference Cycle CLI and how to run Cycle CLI in a Jenkins file. And that general idea pretty much is the same across whatever other pipeline tools you may use. In this same directory, I have an Azure DevOps pipeline file, Azure pipelines.yaml, and so we run some regression tests not only in Jenkins on a multiple time a day basis, but also in Azure DevOps. And in Azure DevOps, obviously it's a YAML based file, just like Jenkins files are, but the syntax is a little bit different because it's a completely different tool. So in here, in this Azure DevOps pipeline, we can see I pretty much do the same thing, right? I set up my environment. I'm running off the same image that I run from Jenkins. And then when I start running my cycle tests, I call the Cycle CLI. I authenticate with, once again, the client app ID and client app ID secret. And then I specify my project file, my cycle user, and then I call my feature file. So same idea, just different syntax, different format, because these are two different pipelining tools. But really, the general crux of it is the same, right? The main thing that is important is that on our image that we're going to be using for running our pipeline and checking in our testing agent into, whether it be Jenkins or Azure DevOps or Cycle CI or GitHub Actions, the image itself needs to be a Windows-based image, and it needs to have the cycle tooling installed on it. And we have public source code available, and I'll leave a link in the description of the video to direct you to that source code. And the idea is using that Packer template to build a air quote cycle ready image. And then we can see here, here's an example of my Azure DevOps pipeline running. Same output, right? It looks a little different, but same idea. I'm running my cycle tests right now. And we see all of our output coming in from the Cycle CLI. In the same way we see it in Jenkins, it looks a little bit different because it's two different platforms. But the end result is the same, because it's running the same feature file, just in a different platform. So yeah, I will give some code examples of how this looks, so you can copy and paste it and sort of morph it to fit your needs. And then I will also link to our example code that's publicly accessible for just helping you get a head start on building a cycle ready image using Packer. So thanks a lot. See ya.